Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the commander of the 139th Airlift Wing at Rosecrans Air National Guard Base, Colonel Barrett Golden.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hey, welcome to this evening's momentous event. What an incredible opportunity to host the U.S. Air Force Band Airmen of Note. I'm Colonel Barrett Golden, as noted, the commander of the 139th Airlift Wing up in St. Joseph, Missouri. Platte City resident, my wife and my 3 children call Platte City home, and we love this community. You have an incredible opportunity to see something pretty momentous tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 139th Airlift Wing, but then we're going to get on to this amazing concert. If you didn't know, the 139th Airlift Wing is located up in St. Joe, Rosecrans Memorial Airport. We're an Air National Guard base. Amazingly, we're citizen soldiers. A lot of us are in this community, in this crowd tonight. The construct of the Air National Guard is to serve 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, and if you're called upon by your federal government or even your governor of the state of Missouri, you can step up and serve. If any of my high school friends out there or any parents have children that are aspiring to potentially serve, the Air National Guard is an incredible opportunity. I pinch myself every day, but 26 years ago this June, I raised my hand, and it's been the most amazing job I've ever had. Not only that, but if you want some incentives to potentially help you get through college, go to trade school, or get a part-time job to pay for that car payment or health insurance, we provide those opportunities. And not only do we fly C-130 aircraft, we operate a tactical airlift platform. There are jobs for many interests out there. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have aircraft mechanics. Currently, if you decided to join the Air National Guard, some of our jobs with a 6-year enlistment are offering up to a $50,000 bonus. Who wouldn't set up a 17 or 18-year-old child rightly in life with that opportunity? What a unique opportunity. I like to say we have recruiters outside here. If you have any questions at intermissions or the conclusion, come on by. But I'm also a Platte City resident. Some of you know me. Connect with me. I love to mentor children. Somebody mentored me one day, and I'm pinching myself every day. That's an opportunity we have before us. So behind me is the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds version of a jazz band. Mr. Callahan, Dr. Vaughn, you've made some amazing leg work, and I hope my band mates have had some incredible Midwest hospitality. I understand you got into some barbecue, so I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, thank you for coming tonight. Tonight's going to be a momentous and memorable event, and I hope you have a great time. The U.S. Air Force Band Airmen of Note specific mission is to honor those who have served, inspire American citizens to heighten patriotism and service, and connect with the global community of the United States Air Force and the United States of America. Let me conclude with the Airmen of Note is a world-renowned jazz ensemble from the United States Air Force. Created in 1950 to carry the style of Glenn Miller's Army Air Force Dance Band. Today, the Airmen of Note continues the innovative course initiated by Miller over 7 decades ago. And now, from Washington, D.C., under the leadership of Chief Master Sergeant Ryan McDonald and the musical direction of Master Sergeant Kevin Surovich, please welcome the Airmen of Note.
Rise as you are able for the presentation of the colors by the Platte Valley Composite Squadron and the playing of the national anthem. You may be seated.
our nation's capital at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, we are the Airmen of Note. Before we get started, I just want to give one more shout out to that fantastic Platte Valley Composite Squadron Honor Guard color team. Thank you, wherever you are out here in the audience. One more hand for the team. Inspiring to see so many young people interested in service. We're very proud of what they do, and I understand some of them are even getting to fly aircraft and gliders and so forth. So really exciting work they're doing in the Civil Air Patrol. And thank you, sir, Colonel Golden, for being here. We appreciate your presence and your leadership tonight, and it's great to get to be with more of our Air Force family here in the Midwest. And I feel right at home because I happen to have grown up in Overland Park, Kansas, so it's good to be back home. Speaking of Kansas City, we just played some music from the Benny Carter and Count Basie universe. That was won by Benny Carter entitled Easy Money, because if you're going to go to Kansas City, you should play some Count Basie. And on that, you got to meet, whoops, pardon me. On that, you got to meet, first over there on guitar from Arlington, Virginia, that was Senior Master Sergeant Jeff Reeser. Next to him, our own Count Basie from Buffalo, New York, that's Master Sergeant Chris Ziemba. And back there on lead trombone, from Salem, Oregon, that's Technical Sergeant Matt Howard. You notice we're moving a little slower today. Like I said, we just had a pile of jack stack, and I was so glad to share that with everybody in the band, but it's hard to be conscious right now. So, we opened up with a tune, don't laugh at that. We opened up with a tune that was arranged by our brilliant baritone sax player, and that was entitled P-Book, and it's by USAF, and that featured the arranger himself from Reading, Pennsylvania, Technical Sergeant Seth Eversole. Back here on alto from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that was Technical Sergeant, Master Sergeant Mike Simprola. And over there on drums, we're one state away. We got to play in his hometown on this tour as well. Doing a great job. He's from Decatur, Illinois. That was Master Sergeant David McDonald. There's one more gentleman that played, and he reminded me that today is May the 4th, Star Wars Day, right? I'm not really much of a fan myself, but I will say that that's not even part of the joke. How about that? He's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's Senior Master Sergeant Luke Brandon on trumpet. So that was a really modern, kind of a late 60s song, and in it, I don't know if you, a lot of music students here, they use an interval called a fourth. There's 8 notes in the scale, and it's the 4th one up. And if you play off the fourths, you have a very kind of, idiomatic jazz sound. And I needed to remind Luke of that today when he told me it was Star Wars Day. In fact, before this, I said, Luke, use the fourths. Anyway, without further ado, we have one more member of the Airmen that you haven't met yet, and she's a fantastic vocalist from Bountiful, Utah. She's going to be singing Spring Is Here. Say hello to Technical Sergeant Claire Campbell.
Oh, spring is here.
Last summer, the Airmen of Note had the privilege of traveling to Brazil and collaborating with the Brazilian Air Force, as well as playing for the public. All of that in celebration of 200 years of friendship between Brazil and the United States. So to commemorate that trip, we'd like to do this next one for you. This will feature Master Sergeant Ted Baker on tenor saxophone. This is Você e Eu.
later on. But on that, once again, from Marshfield, Massachusetts, you got to hear Master Sergeant Teddy Baker on the tenor sax. Before that, the newest member of the Airmen, our fantastic jazz trombonist from Buffalo, New York, that's Technical Sergeant Brendan Lanahan. And Colonel Golden alluded to it, and I will mention it as well, that if you have any questions about the Air Force, we have the recruiter Tech Sergeant Aaron Royal here in the lobby, or in the room with us here. And, oh, there you are. So, tell you what, why don't we close the doors and lock the doors until we get 10 minutes. Up next, we're going to play an arrangement I did for our lead trombonist and former music director, once removed, Master Sergeant retired Ben Patterson. And unfortunately, we never got to perform this because he retired before we were able to do it. And I'm going to play it myself, and it involves thinking fondly of home, and I feel it's appropriate because this is my home. And this is, we're going to do for you Back Home Again in Indiana. Please enjoy. you're listening in our introduction, you will hear we were created in 1950 to carry on the legacy of Major Glenn Miller and his Army Air Corps dance band. And for those of you that don't know, Glenn Miller was the biggest pop star in the world, had more hits than the Beatles and Elvis combined, and more top charts in the 1940s before they started tracking these things. He was the Taylor Swift of 1942. And he decided at the height of the World War II to bring his entire band into the Army Air Corps, and he himself took a commission and led his band across Europe playing for war-weary troops and civilians, and playing hundreds of shows and leaving the impact that jazz, this American art form, this unique creation on the planet, is this sound of freedom. And without that, you know, we wouldn't have that today. We were in Scotland 2 years ago for the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo. And the first thing they requested, as indicative of being an American band, they wanted to hear Glenn Miller's music. So we always love doing that. Glenn Miller, of course, lost his life as a result of his service. But we honor his legacy today. We always play some of his music, and we salute the World War II generation, the few that are still with us, as truly the greatest generation that this country has ever known. And when we get back, we actually get to honor a few of the last remaining Tuskegee Airmen on Memorial Day, so that's going to be very exciting. Look for that on our social media. Anyway, we're going to play a couple of Glenn Miller hits for you, and there's some room here in the front if you want to dance, because back in the day, people would definitely cut a rug to this. So first we're going to do Tam and Charlie, then we're going to do Long and Low and Far Away. Please enjoy. We have a lot of events in DC and that we do. One thing we do in the spring is the Jazz Heritage Series, where we bring, you know what I'm realizing, I'm telling you all this stuff and you don't really have a way to keep track of this. If only there was a way for you to get to our website and our social media. There's a banner right there. There's a QR code on it. I forget that. What a coincidence. If you scan that QR code, you can go to our website, find all our tour dates, our recordings, our social media, and all that kind of stuff. And as I was saying, one of the things we do in the spring that you can find out about right there on the banner is our Jazz Heritage Series, where we bring in 3 luminaries from the world of jazz. We record an album with them and perform a concert, and then that album is distributed across the country to radio stations. And this past year was no exception. And the third guest we had was the brilliant Italian guitarist Pasquale Grasso. And he came to us kind of with the edict of, I want to play Bird, I want to play Monk, I want to play Tad Dameron, I want to play bebop. And so, you know, we all love that, of course, absolutely. And young Brendan Lanahan over here on second trombone pinned this brilliant arrangement of the Tad Dameron tune Hot House. And I'll give the music students here extra points if they can guess what this song is based on. It's called The Contrafact. Come talk to us after the concert, and if you have the right answer, maybe you'll get a CD. Anyway, here is Brendan Lanahan's version of Hot House. Please enjoy. Sergeant. He's from Marion, Massachusetts. That's Master Sergeant Christian Barsvik. Next to him, Lieutenant Sachs from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That's Senior Master Sergeant Grant Langford. Running around base from Windsor, Connecticut. That's Master Sergeant Ben Thomas. We got a few more left, and this one's a really special one because it's another song by a he's not lesser known, but he's lesser known for being from Kansas City, a native, entitled, his name is Bob Brookmeyer, and he wrote for many years with Thad Jones and the Lewis Vanguard Big Band, famous jazz orchestra, and this is a really beautiful piece, and we're going to feature a pianist on it, entitled First Love Song. tonight will be no exception, but first I want to say that, in all kidding aside, there are very few universe incarnations where you wouldn't be paying a lot of money to see Chris play. So from the moment he joined the band, I think we all consider ourselves lucky to have you among us. So one more hand for Chris and the And I'm sorry that Patrick Holmes is better than Josh Allen. I've been bitter because 4 guys in the band are from Philly, so it's been a rough couple of months. Anyway, at this time we'd like to call our sponsor for the gig, Mr. Connor Callahan, Assistant Director of Bands here, and Brian Chief Master Sergeant McDonald to the stage for the presentation.
Is everybody having a good time tonight? Well, I just wanted to take just a short moment here to just thank you, sir, for all that you did to put on this concert this evening. We really appreciate being here. And just on behalf of Colonel Don Schofield back at home in Washington, D.C., and all the members of the band, I just want to say thank you so much for all you did. Just have a small token of appreciation for you. It's actually a picture of me. I just hope you'll hang it in your office and think of us fondly. So thank you so much.
And before we play another tune, I want to introduce to you a few folks here that haven't gotten a shout out yet, but yet whom without we couldn't do our job. First, back there in the back corner, he's a fantastic audio engineer from Phillips, Wisconsin. That's Master Sergeant Jim Wolf. And over here taking care of our live sound on stage, another fantastic audio engineer from Chicago, Illinois. That's Master Sergeant Nate Martin. Back here, one of those Philly guys, but a beautiful guy, a fantastic split lead trumpet player from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the second newest member of the band. That's Technical Sergeant Fareed Simpson Hankins. Next to me, spending his first week in his new stripe of Senior Master Sergeant, and about the best example of air power you're ever going to hear in the United States Air Force, on bass trombone from Greenbush, Maine, that's Senior Master Sergeant Ben Polk. And you briefly met our leader, but once again I want to give him a shout out. And I'm a Chiefs fan, but there's no chief greater to me than my boss on lead trumpet from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Chief Master Sergeant Brian McDonald. And actually, let me embarrass him too. I had thought that there is another connection, in addition to it being May 4th, is also Maynard Ferguson's birthday, and Chief McDonald toured the world for a number of years before he got into this band with the Maynard Ferguson Jazz Orchestra. And in addition to that, one more connection, as we are in KC, Kansas City. He also played in KC in the Sunshine Band, so all kinds of connections. Exciting one to close out here for you. It's entitled Neurosis, and it's by Chucho Valdez. Please enjoy. before we leave, we just want to come out here and first off say thank you to you and honor a special group of people that are here tonight. Indeed, they're at every show we play, and we play a lot of concerts across this great nation, north to south, east to west. The past year, we've been from Billings, Montana to Miami, Florida, and we see a wider swath of this country than most. And one group of people that are always present at our concerts are, to me, I believe, the cornerstone of our society. And men and women that have understand the meaning of service before self, that have raised their right hand to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I'm talking, of course, about our veterans. So if you are a veteran of any of the armed forces and you're here tonight, would you please raise or give us a stand or give us a wave so we can honor you tonight? There are over 300,000 veterans in the state of Missouri alone, and we couldn't do it without you. It's on your giant shoulders that we, the members serving on active duty, do today. And I believe we can never honor our veterans well enough or often enough. We ourselves are 18 active duty airmen right here on stage. In addition to our partners in the Guard, Reserve, we represent the more than 640,000 airmen in the United States Air Force. Yes, thank you. You're lucky that you're close to the airlift wing at the 139th Airlift Wing, and you're close to Whiteman Air Force Base. So many of you see a blue active duty Air Force uniform. A lot of people across the country don't. And so what we do, and what we're honored to do, is to wear this uniform and represent the excellence of all the men and women serving in the United States Air Force. Because we can't take you onto the flight line with Colonel Golden. We can't take you into the missile silos to see what they do down there. And if I'm being honest, we're not allowed down there either, but that's another thing. But what we can do is come here today and represent the excellence of all the men and women in the United States Air Force and all the career fields, many of them from right here in the Kansas City metro area, sometimes doing challenging jobs in dangerous places far from home, so that we can gather here today at peace, free from fear, and enjoy this beautiful concert. So, I ask you to keep those brave men and women in your thoughts and to think about, normally I give this speech and I talk about what's your America the Beautiful. Well, in this case, this is my America the Beautiful. Eastern Kansas, northwestern Missouri, this is home to me. And we have people from all over the country in the band, and we go everywhere in the country, and every place to each person is their own America the Beautiful. And they're all special, and they're all different. And so tonight we're going to close with our version of America the Beautiful, featuring our fantastic vocalist, Techno Sergeant Eric.